So I'm going to be looking at here. So Gray, I'll do introductions in a second, but I'll just get the live stream set up so people can kind of see us and hear us and all that sort of jazz. It looks like we are live. So welcome everybody. Welcome to a special Sunday night Breathcast. Couple of fun facts for you. This is the first Breathcast live we've done on the Breathcast channel since the Breathcast channel launched about a year and a half ago. For those that don't know, we moved the podcast off Take a Deep Breath and moved it to its own special channel because people seem to like to have the long form stuff separately. And we've published about 25 podcasts on this channel now. And we just hit 3,000 subscribers like last week, which is ace. So big hello to everybody that's joined. Maybe we'll get a few more today. I'm checking the livers there. I'm checking the chat to make sure there are people in there as well. So when you get a sec, if you just give us a hello and all that sort of jazz, that'd be ace. And I will kick us off. Just to let you know as well that I will do a proper intro in a second and we'll chop all this fluff out of the techie stuff getting on there. So just bear with me. Okay, cool. Okay, so today's guest, I think you've had the most attendances on this podcast. I think it's like 3 or 4 now. I forget. This might be 4.
Wow, that's a bit of an honor, Mike. Thanks. Definitely, I'm sure we've definitely done 3.
This is definitely 3. So you're on par with Patrick, which is not a bad par to be on with.
Me and Patrick fighting.
That's who's going to get number 4. So welcome to Gray. So I've done a little bio intro for you, Gray. So I'll just read, make sure I don't get it wrong. So certified master Oxygen Advantage Instructor. Functional movement coach, Buteyko Practitioner, teacher of Qi Gong. Through his company Adventures of Movement and Breath, Gray offers workshops and retreats across Europe, which I'm really hoping to go on at some point, as well as online programs and courses to help individuals optimize their health and fitness through natural intuitive. I can't say that word.
Intuitive.
Thank you, sir. Intuitive movement and breath work. His approach emphasizes simplicity, focus of the breath, and challenging oneself without overdoing it. Gray has his own YouTube channel, and he is also part of the Breath Source, which we're going to be talking about today. So very excited. So first of all, my friend, how are you doing?
Yeah, great. Thank you. And thanks, Mike, for inviting me and then telling me yesterday, let's do it live.
No pressure.
So yeah, no pressure on that. So apologies if I'm a little bit groggy because I'm just getting over my first bout of COVID. So it's the first time I've had COVID, so it knocked me out a little bit. So I do sound a little bit hoarse. Just tell me if my mind starts wandering off on various topics. Just guide my attention back to what you want me to talk about. But yeah, good. Thank you.
Good. What's happened to your bulk score since you had COVID?
We could do a whole podcast on this, actually. Interestingly, Bolt score, control pause, comfortable pause, however you want to look at it, didn't change.
Fascinating.
But heart rate variability was on the floor. So what I would normally get for like after going out running for a morning session and having obviously low heart rate variability when I come back from a run, was my sort of like overnight heart rate variability. So some really interesting data I've got from that and some interesting sort of like thoughts and theories on it on vagus nerve, how I couldn't slow my heart rate down, which was interesting as well. So yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to do a separate podcast with Andy. Remind me Andy's surname.
Yeah, Andrew Ritchie.
Andrew Ritchie. So the 3 of us are going to do another podcast completely separate to this, where we talk about HRV and the studies that you guys have done, which I'm really excited. I don't want to spoil that too much.
Sure.
But I'd just be curious to know, why do you think COVID brought the HRV down, just as a very high level?
I think because there was an element of vagus nerve dysfunction. Now, I'm not a clinician or anything like that, so please don't take this as given. But what I noticed was typical breath practice: breathe in, hold for 7 or whatever, exhale for 8, which is sort of like a really standard. Let's really downregulate the nervous system, and you can physically feel your heart rate lowering because you're activating the vagus nerve. Heart rate didn't change. So it felt as if my heart rate was just racing all of the time. So overnight, when you would expect that really good, nice heart rate variability. Every time you breathe in, your heart rate goes up. Every time you breathe out, the heart rate goes down. It was literally just beating like a metronome. So heart rate was increased, resting heart rate was increased. And this was a good eye opener actually from the point of view as a breath coach, because it really highlighted that, yeah, breath is so important and it's the foundation of everything, but it's not the magic bullet. Do you know what I mean? Because I physically could not lower my heart rate because of whatever was going on, fighting infection or anything like that. So that was an interesting point. So I think that's why heart rate variability was low, just because your body's fighting off infection. So it puts you into fight or flight mode. So it doesn't give you any of that time for rest and recovery, because it's just helping you to survive.
Yeah, and I guess what we don't know the answer to, which would be fascinating, is like how much of the preparation you've done has helped you get through where you are now. You'd assume quite a lot, you know, because I assume you have a good HRV. What are you using to check your HRV these days? Is it Whoop?
So I use different things actually, because I think particularly because we've been researching for the course. So I use overnight things like the Aura Ring and the Whoop. Oh, where's the Whoop band? Whoop band. Which will give you your sort of like overnight heart rate variability and readiness in the morning. And then I use Hanu Health, which is a really good monitor to recognize sort of like your heart rate variability journey during the day. You have to wear a heart rate strap, but I mean, I wear that when I'm running, so it's quite handy if you're just wearing it for the rest of the day. You can then physically see things that you do changing your heart rate variability. For example, if there's some simple movements that I can do and the heart rate variability increases, so you can physically see that actually happening. Another good app that I use is Elite HRV, so that gives you measurements as well. These apps tend to be free or not a large amount of money. And I think what is fantastic nowadays is that the tech is really good quality tech. Do you know what I mean? Because what you don't want to be doing is following the tech and it not being spot on or not being as accurate as possible, because we can get a little bit bogged down and reliant on biofeedback. So I think that's an important thing to put across. But when you know why you're using it and what is monitoring and how it can help you, it certainly is very useful, I find, I think.
Yeah, no, we're in that very interesting place now, aren't we, where we've got all this fairly affordable tech and we can get all this data, almost too much data. Right, I don't want to delve too deep in the HRV because my brain's really going crazy, and I want to save that for that conversation when we get Andy on as well, because we're going to have a really good chat. So we are colleagues on the Breath Source app. For people watching right now or later, the link is down below. You can get started completely for free. So I thought we could talk a bit about that in a bit, but for those that haven't come across your work before, when did you first get started with becoming like a breath coach? What was that? What got you down that route, and what made you decide to make that as part of your career?
So it started sort of like late 2000s, coming into the early 2010, 2011, when actually my mum got cancer, and I had a really urge to help her, and I didn't really know how to help her. And I loved my gym work. I enjoyed my gym work. I enjoyed running. I was very much into trail running, being outdoors running. And I remember distinctly being up north, where my family are from, and thinking, I'm going to do a personal training course, because I worked one-to-one with a personal trainer then, who I still work with now, and we work together, which is fantastic, Luke. And I'm going to train to be a personal trainer. So I did a part-time course in personal training, and I'm lucky in the fact that I was working for myself. So I was working as a graphic designer, a web designer. So I was working from home. So I didn't have any major job to leave or anything like that. There was no major change. Well, I suppose it was a major change in my life, but it was quite an easy major change in my life, in that I did this part-time course, and then I was working. It was like, if PT work comes along, I'll do PT work. If graphic design work takes over again, I'll do graphic design work. But I think where your passion lies, and I mean, I'm not that I'm not passionate about graphic design or wasn't passionate about graphic design. I still do my website, posters, etc. But obviously my passion was gearing towards helping people, personal training. So anyway, did personal training course, and I wanted to particularly specialize in running technique because I was watching people running out of breath, struggling, and even on the treadmill at the gym, pushing it and just looking really, really unhappy and really as if they're not enjoying stuff. And I'm like, this can't be right. This is not the way we should be exercising. This can be damaging to our bodies. So I looked up various. Tell me if I'm going off on too many different tangents. Just
Please
stop
keep
me.
going. Yeah.
I looked at various running techniques, how to run more efficiently, etc. And something that kept coming back to me was this book by a guy in the States called Danny Dreyer called Qi Running. I was like, this is interesting. What's Qi? What does this mean? I had no idea I didn't know about meditation or Qi or energy work or breath work at the time. So I read the book, and there was a lot of very logical, practical advice in there about cadence, foot turnover, posture, balance, etc. And it's like, yeah, this makes sense. This makes total sense. So I started adopting some of the things that I was reading in the book and finding that, yeah, I was becoming more efficient as a runner. I was enjoying the running. I was enjoying getting outdoors. So I did a Qi running course, a teacher training course with some wonderful people in Germany, Marion and Hans, and qualified as a Qi running instructor. And then started to work with an England athletics coach because I wanted a little bit more from a performance element. And just by total coincidence, he is a cardiophysiotherapist at one of the top London hotels. So the first thing he did with me is like, right, lie down, let me check your breath rate. And I'm like, why is this guy checking my breath rate? I want to run. But again, obviously with the Qi running and everything, I understood the importance of breath. So this just reinforced it a little bit to me. It's like, yeah, hang on a minute. If we are not breathing efficiently, we are not going to be moving efficiently. Logical light bulb moment. Yeah, that makes sense. If we're breathing easy, if we're staying with the breath, then we're not pushing beyond where we are currently at physically. And I suppose in a way that underlies everything that I teach from moving on from there. Robin, the running coach, was very much into Buteyko. Right. Danny Dreyer introduced me to Patrick McEwen, who obviously Major Buteyko, and at the time was just written the Oxygen Advantage. So Patrick contacted me through Danny and said, look, I'm in Ireland, you're in London, you teach Qi running. Qi running is all about the breath, blah, 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 blah. So we did the first ever Oxygen Advantage masterclass in London. And I remember dragging clients in there. Come on, this is a really good course. It teaches you how to breathe, etc. And I suppose this was back 2015, 16. So there wasn't really much out there about breath work. I don't even know. I'm sure Wim Hof was around then, but I certainly wasn't aware of any other particular breath work or breath work techniques or breath work practices. So we did the first Oxygen Advantage masterclass. And then I joined Patrick's first instructor training in Galway. So there's about 8 of us. A few of us are still there. Leo is there. Jenny is still there. Tom is still there. So it's great to see all of these master instructors who did the first training with him. And what is brilliant, what I really appreciate is I've seen how OA has grown, how things have developed, how we've brought different nuances into the teachings, into the teacher trainings, and how open Patrick is to development and cultivating of a practice rather than this is just a technique. And I think, as Jacko, one of the instructors that I work with, always highlights, is it really is about the principles of breath work. And I think as long as we stick to these principles, you can go anywhere with that. And I think that's what's exciting. So I've had no sort of like major asthma or anything like that, or any traumas in my life that has driven me to breath work. It just all sort of has weaved its way into my life. That's a very long way of explaining it, I think.
It's very cool. And I've heard bits of that before, but it's always ace to hear it all put together. It's so you were one of the first instructors then, one of the first master instructors to go into Patrick's program. That's very cool. Original gangster.
Yes.
Yes, we were very lucky, weren't we? Because we got to spend, I don't know how long it was, like half a week with Patrick and all these other Oxygen Advantage instructors last August, which is bonkers already how quickly time's going by. And we got to talk about all things breath for all these days and hang around with all these wonderful people and Patrick in Ireland and go to Galway. And yeah, felt very, very privileged and to be part of that group. That was really, really lovely. What would you say has been one of your most recent learns with breath work in the last year or so? Is there anything like stand out? I know you talk a lot about the physiological side and a few other bits. Is there anything else? Anything like, because all this information I feel like is coming so fast now. So is there anything that stands out for you recently?
I think the things that stand out for me is there's so much to learn, which I think is good, which I think is exciting. And I think this is one of the things with the Breath Source, which is so great about the Breath Source app, is that now this is an app I would use. So I would go in here and learn different practices and different approaches. I think the biggest learning thing for me is, as a coach and as someone who coaches, does the teacher training, it's really important to be yourself, and not just rely on what other people say. So really understand how you feel the breath, I think, is key. Because it's easy to say, oh yeah, I'm breathing with my diaphragm because I'm a coach, or I can easily do 6 breaths per minute and things like this. It's like, just take your time to, do you feel that? What does it feel like, rather than you giving people a set of instructions of how we should be breathing. And I think the other big thing that I'm learning as we go along, and it's difficult again as a coach, I think, is we have to, I don't want this to be non-judgmental. And again, it's something very easy to say, non-judgmental. And then we go, right, your Bolt score is 6. You are a dysfunctional breather. Yay. And it's like, hang on a minute. That's not a great place to be, I don't think. But at the same time, as a coach, we are here to help and nurture and help people improve. So it's not to say to people, oh, you're wonderful and everything's fantastic, etc. My hand's just raised because I went like that and it creates a reaction. But I think that's one of the most challenging things as a coach, and one of the most challenging things to put across to other coaches, is we talk about non-judgmental, but we have to be non-judgmental on ourselves. We have to be non-judgmental on our clients, and also our client. How many people come into you and say, oh, I'm a mouth breather, or, oh yeah, I only chest breathe. I had it with runners. It's like, oh, I've got terrible posture. Yeah, I'm a great runner, but I've got terrible posture. So that they bring judgment into the sessions. And as a runner, that's fine. You haven't got bad posture. We can work on your posture. From a breath worker's point of view, that judgment, that thought, that emotion affects how you breathe at that moment in time. So I think that's so key when we are working with people, is we might watch them, oh yeah, they're breathing quite quickly. There's obviously something going on there. We don't know what is happening in that split moment in time. Yeah. And again, one of the other key things to think about is duty of care to that client. So you've got to really look after that client and making that client feel comfortable and safe before you start anything. So in a way, you asked for a technique, and I've come up with lots of different thoughts, but all of that feed into then how people breathe.
Yeah. And especially today, I mean, all my clients are on Zoom like this, and so you've already got this barrier between you and this weird situation where you're both on camera. And even though we've had Zoom now for a couple of years, there's still that, there's an artificialness, but then at the same time there's a I'm at homeness as well, and a relaxedness.
Yes.
So you get this kind of weird thing going on. Sometimes it's really good, sometimes it's a bit awkward. And what else would you say to the younger Gray coach in you? What other advice would you give? Because there's probably some breath coaches watching this right now. What other lessons have you learned along the way? Because you've always got some great wisdom when it comes to coaching.
I think definitely watch other coaches, listen to other coaches, um, listen to why you resonate with other coaches. And this is not just people who necessarily breathwork coaches, other people who inspire you. The other thing I would say is not to get fixated on one thing or one technique, because I think there's too much in the world where it's too much black and white in the world at the minute, and there's too many tribes in not a positive way. There's too many sort of like cult leaders in a not a very positive way. And what I would hate to see is certain breathwork going down that way, is like, this is the way to teach it, and this isn't the way to teach it, and ours is the only way to teach it. So I think, again, this is another great thing about the breath source, is just bringing people together, be vulnerable, because I think it's really key to have a vulnerability about you. Is, yes, you have to have the confidence to know vaguely what you're talking about. But I will always say that even vaguely knowing what you're talking about, things will change anyway. So as long as you're not guiding people in a way that is going to be damaging to them, and if you don't know certain things, obviously don't pretend you know stuff, and say to people, look, I'll go away and I'll check that out. There are thousands of coaches. I mean, I've just been listening to your podcast with all of the other breath source masters who have got so much knowledge and awareness and clarity and stuff, which is so powerful. And we're not all at that level, but it doesn't mean to say that you don't have something to offer and don't have something to give to help people. Why are you teaching this? I think that's the key thing I say to people. Why are you teaching? And if it's to make me feel good, it's not going to work. That's not going to come across to your client. But if it's because you have a genuine want to help people, because you can see they improve from what you deliver, the value you offer in your coaching, then you're not selling something to somebody. You are serving that person or that group of people. And if you know you're doing that, you'll have the confidence to go on teaching. If you just feel as if you're reading a script to someone, then maybe that's not an ideal thing to do.
Yeah, it's I feel very blessed to have that as my role, as to coach people with the breath. And it's every client I've worked with has been, there's a subtle nuance. Even if they're coming with the same thing, let's say it's to increase focus or lower anxiety or whatever, they might have the same goal in mind. But once you start delving in and looking at what they do and how they do it, it's a job I don't think you could get bored doing, because it's different every single time. And every single person that you connect with. And I feel like there's that big piece. And that's what I like about the breath source, actually, as well, as everyone, I've been using this term recently, flavor. Everyone's got their own flavor of breath work. And everyone's got their own flavor how they teach breath work as well. So you and I, both Oxygen Advantage coaches, going to take subtle differences how we do things. And then you've got people that are doing like Kriya, which I didn't even know what Kriya was until I got, down the Kriya rabbit hole. And you've got pranayama, you've got all these wonderful things. And like I say, all this expertise on this app, and everyone's got their own flavors of how they're teaching it. And there's this thing where you just resonate with somebody more than maybe somebody else. And that's completely human and normal, but that's the great thing about it. So I think that's a good way to segue into the app, actually. So for those that are watching, so what are we on now? Today's 26th of March, 23. When did we launch the app? Like 2 weeks ago?
10th of March.
10th of March. Wow. Yeah. So already a couple of weeks old now. It's unbelievable. We've hit over 10,000 users in such a short period of time. There are probably hundreds of breathing techniques on there now, but it's really well categorized. So you can go in through instructor. So you can download the app for free. It's on Android and iOS, the breath source. The link is down below. Get started for free. We've all got free techniques in there, and you can go and you can breathe with me, you can breathe with Gray, you can breathe with all the other breath masters that we've had on the podcast so far, and we're uploading new content all the time. So we're all adding new content, also it keeps it fresh, and we've got loads of other very cool stuff happening soon. So for example, there will be live classes within the app, which is Ace. This podcast will be in the app, and there's loads of other stuff coming. There's also a shop in there as well, where we've got good discounts on products we've all tested. So you've got like the Brain Tap, which is behind me here, which is very interesting, gets you into like a deep state of hypnosis. And then you've got all these lovely binaural beats and things. I don't have the supplements with me right here, but there's different supplements that are on there as well. So loads of reasons to just get stuck in and get started with the app. And anybody that's watching now that's already had a breathe with us, thank you so much for being part of it. Great. What was it that attracted you to signing up to be part of that? What were kind of the key things that you were convinced by?
Well, firstly, your recommendation. So I really appreciate you for recommending me to Travis and to Josh, and mentioning me to them, which was fantastic. So thank you for that. And I think speaking to them, the fact that it's a co-creative, I think is so important, so that we are creating our own content. We're all part of the app. And I think because there is such a wide variety, it's a space where you can find those different types and styles of breath work, or coaching. And as you say, the flavors, I like that word, actually. I'm going to steal that from you. The flavors of different breath work. So somebody might resonate with Jesse, or were you talking about Kriya to Kat? So I listened to Kat's podcast, and that was fascinating. You mentioned about Qi Gong to her, and it's like a lot of the stuff we did on the opening Breathcast was all of that like movement with the Kriya breath, and it's like it's one of the Qi Gong movements. Yeah, do you know what I mean? It's it's a spinal cord breathing movement. So I really resonated with Kat. So I've been following a lot of the stuff that Kat is teaching on there. And that's what I just like about it. It's very open, it's honest, and it's conscious, what we call conscious capitalism. Yes, we have to make a living out of this. And it upsets me when people post on Facebook going, oh, you're ripping people off, teaching them how to breathe. It doesn't happen a lot, thankfully. But we have to make a living out of this. But it's a good way of the app. It's not a lot of money. You can pay you can pay weekly, you can pay monthly, and we all get a share in that, which is great. And there's just some fantastic people on there. Met some really good people on there.
Yeah, no, it's lovely to have. I mean, I think you already had this to a degree more than me, because you were more involved with the OA, and I know you did the Qi running. But I remember as I got into this gig, especially pandemic as well, so that's obviously mixed in, it was a really blessed, lovely job, but also a job that's quite lonely. Yes. And almost a job where, I mean, I have to say, like, probably you were the most generous out of any breath coach I ever spoke to give me your time and knowledge, and we would just chat, wouldn't we, for hours about breathing. So I always valued that with you, but that I always felt was quite rare. Whereas I'm very generous, and you're very generous. I like to just help people out as much as possible, give them airtime, all that sort of jazz. And so finding this group of people has been really emotional and really made me very grateful, because now there's like, I can reach out to Jesse Coomer, I can reach out to Travis, I can reach out to all these different people, and we can have a chat, and we can go, I'm struggling with X, be it a thumbnail or a breathing technique or some science to do with breathing, and we've got this lovely community. And to be fair, now since I came back from Ireland, we've got that same thing happening in the OA Masters group, which is incredible. Like that is a very good group if you want to go deep down the science. That WhatsApp group is like, every time I go in there, like, wow, there's just studies being posted and people have discovered things and they're testing things. So it's what's really been lovely for me over the last sort of year or so is to be connected to the OA community, which is a beautiful community, and now this breath source community, and to have these tribes, groups of people where you can go for support or connection. And and I think that's really important with these sort of jobs. And I do worry for the future, not just breath work, but as we become home workers and we all just sit in our houses and do jobs all day, and some jobs are very different to others, I do worry for us as like a collective group about home working. And so I think, like, first of all, it's really important to try and find something you really love, because I was doing the corporate stuff for years, and secondly, like, to have some sort of meaning in it, and have that community. And so I feel like through the breath source, we've got that, and that's just growing every day now. I'm loving those groups and the connections. So really,
I think
cool.
actually that's a good point you make about the home working, but actually I would turn that into a positive, because what I found with that is that actually when you do get together then as a group, you value that sort of like in-person time so much more. So I've been doing some corporate work, which is on Zoom, all been online, but now I get the opportunity to go into the offices every so often. And if I was just going into the offices every so often, fine, but it's such a different experience now. And I think also with retreats, I found that one of the reasons why I've really focused on retreats is because it gets people together. So I think in a way we can appreciate that a little bit deeper, maybe, hopefully, maybe that's a positive coming from it.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. There is, again, it's like everything, there's a balance, isn't there? So there's that lovely balance of, I get to work from home a few days a week and I get to go and see some people. But then you've got the extremes of people that are still going to the office all the time, people that just work from home all the time. And yeah, it's finding that lovely balance, isn't it? So yeah, I know what you mean. As soon as I get together, like when we were in Ireland, I was like, wow, this is amazing. There's like, how many 40 of us all together, breathing together, meditating, learning. Really, really cool. I really want to talk to you about movement, because I know this is like big on your list. And this is something that I've gone down a rabbit hole of recently. So to give credit where credit's due, Dr. Brown, Dr. Gerberg from, I think it's Breath, Body, Mind, but also from a good friend, Tom Granger, who did Draw Breath, back there somewhere, who's my business partner for Airheads. I've got obsessed with shaking and tapping, and what they call tapping and slapping, which could sound a bit rude actually, but tapping and slapping all over the body. And I got obsessed with the Qi Gong, especially when we were in Ireland, and we did a live class, which people can watch here. And for me, personally speaking, the reason I was drawn to breath work initially was my anxiety levels. I've mentioned this many times, but I didn't even have a word for anxiety when I was in the corporate space. Just felt crap all the time. And only later realized, I'm anxious. And then the breath work really like leveled that down. I was like, wow, I didn't know you could feel this level of calm. And then over the last year or so, I discovered this movement stuff, and it's just taken it to a whole new level. And it was almost like I did a little bit of a disservice to myself only doing the breath work without the movement. And as soon as you combine those two things, I was like, of course you move when you breathe. Of course you do that. And I feel like the Wim Hof stuff kind of gets around that a little bit, because you're really huffing and puffing and you're really moving the body. But with the gentle stuff, it's almost a bit cruel, isn't it, to make people just lie there when they're full of energy, and you go and just lay there still and just try and focus on your breath. So I'd love to get your thoughts on breath, movement, why you've gone down that route, any wisdom you've taken from Qi Gong and all the other stuff, and what you think is going on there. There's quite a lot in there, but just, your thoughts on breath and movement.
Well, it's interesting because going about the shaking and the tapping and slapping is all sort of like basic Qigong warm-up practice and everything. So the people knew this centuries and centuries ago. And you say about, we like to compartmental stuff, isn't it? This is our breath work, this is our movement, this is our exercise, but it's all one. So even when you're sitting, breathing, balanced on a chair, nice tall spine, etc., you're moving. And I think that's key to understand that as well, is that there's a movement in the spine as you breathe in. There's that extension through the spine. There's a movement in the spine as you breathe out. There's that softness. The rib cage expands and contracts no matter how little or much air that you are breathing in. So firstly, I would say to people, you are constantly moving. So even when you're just focusing on the breath in a seated posture, think about a rhythm, think about a movement. But a lot of people, when you just start to focus on the breath, particularly from an anxiety point of view, actually get stressed out focusing on the breath. So that's a nice place to start with a little bit of simple movement, is you don't have to think about the breath. But also the movement gets the breathing muscles and the breathing space prepared, if you like, because we tend to all get a little bit tight, and we get a little bit tight in the upper body, we get tight in the chest, so that there is no movement, that our back tightens up. And then when we get tight, what do? We go to the opposite extreme and we do a stretch, and I've done my movement. Or we'll go and do some exercise. And I've spent 8 hours sat at this office desk. So now I'll go and run 13 miles to really feel good. So we tend to go from one extreme to another. But one of the things I love about the Qi Gong is it's very simple movement, slow, controlled movement. It's not easy movement. And it is with the intention of the visualization, using visualization, but really guided by the breath. So if you lose control of the breath, you lose control of your movement. The first sign of any neuromuscular overload, where do you see it? Where do you see that? Any first sign? Somebody's stressed out, you see it in the breath. So stressed out neurologically, emotionally, stressed out physically, you see it in the breath. So if you let the breath guide you, you are never going to get to the point where you overstress or overwhelm the system. And there's a big difference between overstressing and overwhelming to challenging. So this is, again, this from a coach's point of view, this is a really challenging point of view, is because people go, oh, it just means moving softly, and Qi running is all about just running slowly and smiling and thinking about beautiful things. There's no real gain in that. But there is if you challenge yourself, but not to the point where we overstress, because we all know that we tend to overdo everything in modern life. We overeat, we overdrink, we overbreathe, we overexercise, we overuse alcohol, we overuse drugs. So there's always that extreme because we're constantly striving.
Yeah.
So the first thing is to pull back. Don't think of that as a negative. Don't think of that as a weakness. And this is what is great about Qi Gong, because you really feel the strength of that movement. Moving slowly is actually a lot more challenging than moving quickly. Doing a very slow squat that you can breathe through, and coming out of that squat that you can breathe through and you can stay with the breath, is a lot more challenging than just doing loads of burpees or loads of squats, pushing yourself, getting out of breath and losing control of the breath. Because that's where, for me, the difference is in movement. Movement is just reaching up to get a cup, or lifting a suitcase, or walking through a park, or running through the park. I did a campaign, and I still use this occasionally, is to say, stop exercising. And everybody went, what? What do you mean? This is terrible. You shouldn't stop exercising. And it's the word exercise. We all tend to push ourselves too much because we think we have to. I'm doing my cardio, so I need to be out of breath if I'm doing my cardio. No, you don't need to be out of breath if you're doing your cardio. You want to be with the breath, because then you're getting the full benefit of your zone 2 training. Stop exercising and start moving.
Love it. You know, when you see somebody that's having an asthma attack, even if it's just like we've seen it in a movie or something, you know, we know that person's not well. Instinctively, we can see that person. Or if I say, picture a sick person in the hospital bed, and this is like a whole Buteyko thing, you can picture that we just instinctively know that person's probably mouth breathing, they're probably upper chest, they're probably wheezing. So we've got this really good picture of like what poor breathing is, and I don't know if that comes from evolution or we've got that from like movies, or maybe it's a bit of both, but that's a whole other thing. But then there's this weird thing that happens, which is we go into a gym or a fitness center and it's kind of acceptable, and it's actually encouraged to be out of breath, to exert yourself. And actually I remember, like, when I used to do yoga not that long ago, I would really be making like large noisy breath sounds because I wanted the yoga instructor to know that I was really pushing myself. And the same thing would happen when I used to do circuits training or body combat. I would just be, you know, really loud breathing because I was like, I'm going to show everybody around me that I'm working harder than they are. And then this is recent for me. The last couple of years, I've been using the nasal strips, the breathe right strips, and I've gone back to jiu-jitsu recently. I used to be big into mixed martial arts, 2015, 16. Not competitively, but as like as a sport, but didn't have any clue about breath. And I've gone back recently, and I've made a conscious, deliberate effort to be a nasal breather. And I know before we go down the route of everybody saying that, when you get to like a HIIT workout, you probably at some point have to open up and the CO2 needs to come out. But there's a huge gap before we need to get there. And so what I've done recently is I've really deliberately tried to be a nasal breather. And the gains that I've found in that sport, I'm not very good at it. I'm not very technical, but I'm not gassing out. And as I look around the room, almost everybody is like, and for the first time, I was able to remove the image of, but that's good because it's a sport, and go, what if that was in the hospital? We'd say that those people were sick, and obviously they're not sick, but they're pushed. But it's this thing around looking at breathlessness as that's not necessarily a good thing. And I think we've accepted it's a good thing in certain situations, but actually it doesn't need to be. And somebody that's not even that fit, but obviously focuses on the breath, to be able to prove to myself that I could keep my breath under control even while somebody's trying to choke me out and I've got all their sweat in my face and I can't use my nose properly because like I'm being blocked. It's been such a game changer. And again, it's all this, it comes back to, like, I know there's coaches watching this. When you experience these things yourself, it makes it so much more visceral and easier to then help your clients because you've lived it yourself. But yeah, I don't know. That's a long ramble to say, I think we need to look at breathlessness as a problem a bit more, especially in the sports industry, because we kind of just accept it like it's a good thing.
I think, again, it's that really subtle nuance of there's a difference between gassing out, which I think is a good term that you use there, as opposed to getting to that top end, because you do want to be able to, in most sports, you do want to be able to push yourself to the limit, but not gas out. So there is that point where you recover. And when you will need to, as you said quite rightly, you want to get to that point where you will need to breathe out through the mouth, get rid of excess CO2. But again, with any sport, it's the recovery that is important. So the quicker you can recover, the better. So it's that there's that difference between I've really just lost control as opposed to now I'm in recovery. I'm going to do a couple of full breaths. I'm going to get rid of excess CO2, going to bring my heart rate down. That's not sort of like breathlessness. That's not losing control. So I would always say to be in control of the breath. And as you say, you can get to a certain level, usually, again, and it takes practice to be able to breathe in and out through the nose for a certain level, certainly when you're going up to sort of like aerobic threshold and things. And if people say they can't do that, they're most probably working too hard. So you just need to pull it back where you can comfortably breathe in and out through the nose. But it's like anything, it's practice. It's about building up your fitness levels. It's about building up your tolerance to CO2. If you've never done it before, if you're in a habit of breathing heavily when you're exercising, you're not just suddenly going to be able to go, right, I can do it straight away. You'll be able to do it straight away and really pull your pace back. But it does take practice and it takes awareness. I think that's the key thing to understand. Because as you say, when I first started running at the gym, I was like, yeah, I need to be out of breath because I'm really working my cardiovascular system. And it's like, nah, that's just damaging your cardiovascular system.
Yeah. I've got this is a little technique I've been playing with. So first of all, it's like when you get to so I've got this air bike in the other room. It's got the fan and it matches your resistance. And so I do like 60 seconds of HIIT on it every day, something like that, 20-second blocks, full intensity. And my goal is to keep my mouth closed throughout the whole thing. And at the start, no bloody chance. But within a couple of months, it's I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's become easier. So I've got the nasal strips on, which is really helping me. It gives up to 30% more space for people watching. Might have some here. No. And so that's helping. But sometimes when I'm at the gym, I forget the nasal strip. It's like, damn it. So I'm doing the HIIT workout and you become so, you just use the word awareness, become so aware of how small my nose is when you're like really out of breath. So I've developed these two things, which I've probably stole from other people. One is when I'm doing CO2 dumping, so I'm going in a bit of a rest bit, and I was like, I need to get the CO2 out of my body so I can kind of relax and get some recovery breaths in. In the past, I'd be like, oh, and then back. But now what I do is I lift the nose up like this, which if you try, it just gives you a bit more space, and then I pull the sinuses out. If anyone's just trying this at home now, it gives you so much more space. And obviously, you can't walk around like this all day, but I do this while I'm just recovering. It just opens everything up. And so I do that for a few breaths, and it dumps all the CO2, and I haven't had to go to mouth breathing. I'm still getting all the benefits of the cooling and the nitric oxide and the filtering and all that sort of jazz. So yeah, I don't know what we call that technique, but that's the Mike Maher schnoz.
The Mike Maher
schnoz, like, yeah, you know, it's not the most attractive. Maybe it's the pig face technique. But anyway, just something for people to play with.
A simple thought to go with that as well, but even before you get to that point, is smile. Because if you smile, it opens up the space. Maybe not as much. Smile and pull your face apart. But just smiling. I think there was a study done on runners. I think it was done on Kipchoge, because he deliberately smiles.
That's interesting.
And I think I might be totally wrong on this, but there was a study done on runners, and they got one group to smile.
Yeah.
They got another group not to change anything, and another group to grimace when they're running. Yeah. And the group that was smiling when they were running increased their efficiency by about 2%. Now, it doesn't sound a lot, but if you're sort of like at elite athlete stage and you can increase your efficiency by about 2%, by smiling, it's free. So yeah, again, you might not feel like it, but if you just have that smile on your face, and again, it comes back to the Qi Gong, Qi Gong, that inner smile, just that thought just opens up the space.
Yeah,
changes your perception of what you're doing. Doing some breath work, and you sit there going really tight faced and everything like that. It's not going to work. Smiling tells the mind you're safe. You wouldn't, if you're under stress, you wouldn't be smiling or laughing. Yeah. So it sends that signal of safety to the brain to say, no, you're fine.
Yeah.
So add a little smile before do that. Smiling on your bike.
I'm going to steal that. That's ace. Yeah, that's interesting. So it gives you, because it's the muscles themselves are just lifting, aren't they, and opening up that space. Fantastic. Let's talk a bit about Hubers, Andrew Huberman. I'd love it if Patrick got on that podcast, Patrick McEwen, at some point. I think it needs to happen. So I've learned a lot from him. I haven't seen his most recent podcast yet. He's done one all about breathing, which I'll link to. So any spoilers there? Was it a lot of like confirmation of stuff for you, or did you come across anything that was new or different or controversial from that podcast? I know you saw it.
I think things could be taken controversially. I personally, I didn't take anything as controversial because I understood he's saying the same things basically. One of the things that I really liked is that he's talking about diaphragmatic breathing, and I think again going back to sort of like that judgmental stage is like, oh, I breathe with my diaphragm. Oh, I'm a chest breather. It's all one space. So everybody breathes with a diaphragm. Everybody breathes with their upper chest. It's just about the ability to create space for the breath. And often trying to breathe with your diaphragm can be more disadvantaged, can be not as advantageous as not trying to breathe with your diaphragm. That doesn't make sense. But I think, like, obviously, if you're laid on the floor, you're laid on your back, you can feel your belly rising and falling. It's very obvious, but that's a very different structural position and effort level to running up a hill. So there's no way you're going to feel the same way, breathing the same way in that posture lying on the floor. So I do get a little bit concerned by belly breathing and chest breathing and being judgmental about those two areas. As with nose and mouth, there's bad nose breathing, there's good mouth breathing, as we all know. So that I thought was really interesting. The other thing was he did a study with meditation box. I think now I might be wrong on this actually. So I'm most probably talking right out of turn. Box breathing and cyclical sighing. So the physiological sigh, repeating the physiological sigh, and the study found that the cyclical sighing I think he also did cyclical breathing as well, sort of like hyperventilation breathing. Again, I might be totally wrong on this, but he was just showing that the cyclical sighing was actually quite relaxing and helped to downregulate the nervous system, which I thought was fascinating. I know from a sighing point of view, this is an interesting point I find in the breath world, because a lot of people would say, oh, but sighing is dysfunctional breathing. But actually, if you look at what OA says and what Patrick says, and you look at what the studies say, frequent sighing is dysfunctional breathing. So we have to be very careful with language and what we hear and what we take forwards. So yeah, if somebody's constantly, there's obviously something going on there. The system is obviously desperately trying to downregulate itself, but there's nothing wrong in that physiological sigh. I think is a wonderful way of just helping to calm the nervous system. I was listening to Jesse's podcast with you. I don't know if I think you broadcast it. What was it? Sniff, sniff, poo?
Sniff, poo.
I loved it. I was on the train going up north listening to him talk about this sniff, sniff, poo.
Yeah.
But it's the physiological sigh. And I think with something like that, it's understanding the context of it. Because if you say to someone, right, this is a really good way of downregulating the nervous system, a physiological sigh. So every time they're feeling a little bit stressed, all they're doing is physiological sighs, then that's not going to be good. But if they understand to take that in context with understanding their tolerance to CO2, the breathe light that we use in the Oxygen Advantage, the many small breath holds which counterbalance that out. So you have to work on that underlying foundational breathing before you, not before you use that, but in context of using that. And I think for me, this is one of the major things that OA and Patrick has taught me, is that breathwork is not just about particular biohacks, if you like. That's maybe not the right word, but it's not just about particular practices. You have to have that foundational functional breath work, nasal breathing as much as possible, nasal breathing at night, breathing through the nose, calm breathing, relaxed breathing. You have to be able to downregulate the nervous system, breathe to our metabolic needs. That's the key thing, because if we're over breathing and then doing lots of physiological sighing and then lots of hyperventilation breathing and then lots of strenuous exercise, all you're doing is stressing the nervous system. So I love all of that Andrew Huberman stuff. I think is so key and so important, and he just explains it so cleverly and so clearly. I think the podcast was like 2.5 hours, and listened to it, and it went like that and took away a lot from it. There's another really good, and I know this is a Brian McKenzie, but we in the Oxygen Advantage will use the BOLT score to be able to measure our tolerance to CO2. Brian McKenzie and Andrew Huberman will do a full breath in, and then how slowly can you exhale through the nose. Now, it's easy to exhale through the mouth. Candles breath, all of that stuff that we teach. Humming is a really good way of doing it. Qi Gong is a really good way of doing it. But how slowly can you exhale through the nose, keeping that steady? And I like that as well, because it's showing your tolerance to CO2, obviously, because the slower you go, the more CO2 you're building up. But it also shows your control of your nervous system, control of the diaphragm, is training the breathing muscles. So I think that's quite nice. And sometimes I've used that in conjunction with the BOLT score and the controlled pause as well, just to see how those things compare with, obviously, with myself and with clients as well. So I like that. That he used in that podcast.
Yeah, no, I use the Excel test as well with clients now, because it just gives another kind of metric. So because it's like some people just really can't get the BOLT score. They think, even though we explain it, it's like how it still almost feels like there's a bit of ego there. Like, how long can I hold my breath for? That's why I like the steps test, because that's a harder one to get wrong. There's only so many steps you can do before you. But then obviously, go ahead.
An interesting point, because the steps one, if you move inefficiently, does that represent your your breath control.
Yes.
So you might build up more CO2 by the movement. So I will always use an in-between one as well, where you do a bolt, where is that first distinct desire, and then do a maximum in the same sitting position, because then you can really compare. So I did this yesterday with 2 clients. So they were going like bolt, it's about 8, 9, 10. And then we did, right, let's go to sort of like a more challenging pause. It's 25, 26, 27, 28. Let's go back to the bolt. It's 15, 16, 17, because they expanded it a little bit at the other side. So that's a good one to do as well. And then you've got the steps in there.
Yeah, there's that. I think again, McEwen says there's some people who just they've got like maybe not very good CO2 tolerance, but they've got really strong willpower, and so they can kind of offset the pain and the feeling they've got. Which is why it's nice to do a lot of different tests, isn't it? Because that's what I do now. I do several.
It's not the be all and end all.
It's just one way of looking at yes, ace. So wrapping this thing up. I think we've covered everything I wanted to cover here. Oh, we did talk a bit about COVID, didn't we, as well? And Bolt scores talk about that right at the start. So let's finish off talking just final thing on the breath source. What sort of exercises have you got on there for people if they want to go and have a little play, a little breathe with you?
Well, I'm doing a little bit of Qi Gong on there. I've done a few little Qi Gong moves because, again, as you say, I think it's important to be able to combine movement and breath. Oh, that's good. I'm looking at that. And some of the basic stuff as well, box breathing. I really like box breathing. I think that's a simple practice. Resonance frequency breathing, and a little bit of explanation. So I think it's quite good to add a little bit of the science behind there. And what you said earlier, Mike, I think is great, is that we can add to this. I'm really looking forward to the live classes that we are going to be able to share on there. So I'm going to be doing some evening classes on there in the UK, which is good. We can promote our instructor trainings. I know you've got some instructor training coming up. I've got some instructor training coming up, and we've got retreats up there as well. And if anybody's got any ideas, do you know what I mean? If people say, I'd love a bit more practice in this, or I'd like a longer session in this, then just let us know. And I'm sure any of the breath masters would be happy to post some stuff up there. So it's always good to get your feedback on the app. It looks really good from what I can see.
It's a very pretty app. Yeah, it's in dark mode now as well. That's one of the most updates, which is lovely. So you've got a whole tile here just for anxiety relief. We've got here like increase in performance, boost in immunity. So what happens is at the top, not that I can do it one-handed, because I'm trying to mess about with it. We've got all of the breath masters here. So anybody that's been watching my podcast recently, you'll notice that a lot of the familiar faces are up here. And then as you go through the app, we've got so much more stuff. So it's really well organized. It's really beautiful, and it's being constantly updated. Let's bring me back into focus if we can. So the link is down below. It is free to get started. Come and breathe with me and Gray. We should do a what would you call it, like a collab? Maybe we could do one together. We could have a collab on there. It'd be quite cool. I was thinking about the day, actually, we should do some collabs on there. So the link's down below. Please come and join us, have a play. Come and join the almost probably 11,000 humans that have downloaded the app in the last sort of 10, 12 days. It's a really exciting time. It's a really important thing as well, I think, because it's given a platform for breath work where not only is it dedicated to breath work, and so everything's focused around that, you've almost got like you've almost got this like filtering system where, for example, you go on YouTube and you can look at anything about anything from anybody, whereas here, it's not just like random people. It's people that have got a body of work that have spent their lives researching all that sort of stuff, like Gray. So I really do think it's worth just coming in and having a breathe with us and having a play. Gray, we'll get you back on again at some point to do the heart rate variability. I cannot wait for that. I'm genuinely excited by that. I want to pick your brains and Andy's brains on that, especially when it comes to grounding, which is something I'm a little bit obsessed with as well. Thank you to everybody in the comments. I'm just having a quick look through and see if I've missed anything. A couple of people, loving the app. Thank you, EB. So until next time, everybody, thank you. Gray, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Everybody enjoy the rest of your weekend. Oh, if anyone's watching this live in what time is it now? It's 5. So in 2 hours, I'm doing a talk for the Breath Festival, Breath Festival, all about functional breathing. So I'm going to pop the link in there as well. So if anyone wants to come join, it's completely free, and you can come and see me do a talk as opposed to asking questions. Until then, I'll speak to you all soon. Thanks, Gray. Thanks, everyone.
Brilliant. Thanks, Mike. Take care.
1 second. Thank you all. End stream. Your stream will stop immediately. Okay, end. 1 sec. And then I go here.